Hey, what is going on, guys? Name's D-Free. Welcome back to another Dragon Ball Z Dokkan battle video. I'm going to go ahead and talk about the requisite units that were on the Valentine's Day banner on JP, which they called it the waifu, air quotes up banner. I call it waifu in Pan because Pan isn't a waifu. She's too young. But, of course, this Bulma shouldn't be either because she's like, what, 15 at this point of the series? So, either way, that being said, I digress. But yeah, that waifu-based banner with a lot of the Valentine's Day units. And I wanted to talk about them specifically because they are on the LR Gohan Legendary banner as well. There's a significantly high chance of pulling them. And I wanted to talk about them because I don't feel like anybody really, when you pull them out, I don't feel like a lot of people even bother to look at them because, you know, they wouldn't strike you as units that could be viable on a lot of teams, and I understand that. So I'm going to give you guys my top 5 ranking of all 5 of them. Hopefully I'm not forgetting anybody, but I don't feel like I am. But either way, let me go ahead and tell you really quick. Pan is number 1, Vidal is number 2, number 3 is Mai, number 4 is 18, and last is Bulma. Bulma is the main featured one on the individual banner, which JP got, but Global never got and never will, basically, at this point. But Bulma was the center one. She's also the only one that awakens. If you care to know why I put them in that position, go ahead and stick around. But if you got the information you needed, that's fine. Either way, so Bulma, a genius summer vacation. This is the one that you go ahead and summon extreme damage to the enemy and recovers 7,777 HP. Bandai and basically Japan is in love with the number 7. Key +3 at the start of the turn, so she's self-sufficient. Recovers 7,777 HP per rainbow orb obtained. Brainiac's rival duo, Battlefield Diva, guidance to the Dragon Balls, and Scientist. And she's not able to awaken yet on Global, but she will awaken through 100 of the boss rabbit medals into this. So she goes from extreme to having supreme. I don't really factor in the leader skill, but they're dual type leaders. All of them, I think, are dual type leaders. You guys can take a look at that. But that's not really a part of this discussion because it doesn't really matter as far as this goes. They're viable leaders, but I'm basing them off of the teams that they will be featured in under the 120% leaders, if I'm even going to talk about that at all. But just off the bat, most of these guys aren't even viable under those 120% leaders that they will be basically under whenever they're all available in the game. So supreme damage, and the 7s turn to 8s. She gets 8,888, and she gets shattering the limit, which helps her, I guess. And she gets 4 key at the start of the turn. Ooh, big whoop. So let me go ahead and say this. Bulma's recovery, for the same reason Buhan's recovery, honestly, is kind of underwhelming, but hers in large part is really just kind of because 8,888 would have been a huge chunk of HP early game before we got like HP-based leaders. Nowadays, that's not. And you need to give her rainbow orbs to truly get that. She can only get a maximum of 5 rainbow orbs at most. In most cases, it'll only be 3 or 4 on average. So her healing is capped at what? 2,400? Whatever the math equates to being. 30,000, I mean. That's a nice chunk. But as we progress in the game, when you have 250,000, HP, 220,000, 200,000. Under these leaders, it just doesn't matter. It may survive, basically give you the survivability of surviving one hit, but like that gets mitigated because she can't actually tank. So, or she doesn't lower the enemy's attack. So she's healing that, but she's going to take it right back if she gets hit. So yeah, Bulma, don't care about her at all. I honestly thought that Bulma was a lot better when I looked at her the first time around back in like February, but now I'm like, nah. Honestly, a lot of my opinions have changed. I didn't even bother to do this. I think the Gaming Claw did, but I didn't bother. So yeah, she gets Supreme. Her initial card is Extreme, 7,000. Yeah, I don't really too much care about Bulma. I don't know why they give her this so she can super attack. It would be one thing if she like stunned or something, but like there's no real reason. She's going to super attack, that's fine. But on top of that, if the linking buddies that are the other 2 units on rotation don't link to particularly well, they're not going to super while she may, unless you have a really good orb layout, in which if you're giving her the rainbow orbs are the ones that connect your orb patterns. So I guess you could feature her with a bunch of orb changers and heal 4 or 5 orbs at a time, because either way, they can only go in a straight line. If you ever notice when you click a rainbow orb and if you along your path there's a different color orb like a purple, blue, whatever, it'll pop the ones on the side so you get a bunch of orbs. You can't do that with rainbows. They will not pop the ones on the side. So she can only literally get 3, 4, or 5 orbs in a turn. So it's capped, and that literally makes her not so good. And I was talking about Buhan earlier. The same kind of thing applies to Buhan. Not that it's bad because he gets it per orb, which is amazing, but when you get more HP, those lower base numbers aren't as impressive as saying, hey, 30% at the start of the turn HP recovery, something like that. So that's another thing. Android 18. So there's nothing really wrong with 18. She's actually very good. I think she's the most balanced unit, or if not the most balanced, the second most balanced unit next to Pan. As far as this goes, she gets offense and defense. She also has supreme damage. So she gets 30% attack and defensive improvement for 6 turns. Not so good right now on global, but when the update comes through to where that doesn't reset in between phases where you beat the boss, that is actually very good. If you can get her a higher super attack level through means like Kai's or whatever, if you really wanted to, I guess, which I wouldn't recommend. But one thing too, these units are all very good because they have 6 cost and then 9 cost when awakened. So they're freaking phenomenal for the cost. Helps them be really good on like super strike events if you're still doing those. But supreme damage for all of them, by the way. She gets that increase, and she also gets 10% attack and defense per orb for every key sphere obtained. Low-key Tech Super Saiyan 3 Broly wishes that he had that passive. Of course, he gets that flat like 100% or 120%, whatever it is. But he wishes he had that orb passive instead of losing his defense. All jokes aside, though, there's not a problem with this unit. She wouldn't fit very well in her mono team for the same reason Tech Cell doesn't. I'm pretty sure she's extreme tech. If she's super, that's even worse. But she wouldn't fit particularly well there. But there's not really anything in particularly wrong with her. She's just not very viable in this game, basically. And she's orb hungry. And I think that extreme tech when Broly drops has too many orb hungry units anyway. So that's the thing. She doesn't really have any good key links either. Battlefield Diva is a 2 key link, I think. But that doesn't help her when she has no one to link with. So 18, once again, I don't really have anything else to say about her. She could become a very good average hard-hitting unit, and then average defensive unit. So there's that. Mai fits the ilk of the new meta, where you're going to run 1 or 2 support units at all times, basically. In an extreme case, you may even run 3, but optimally, you'd run 1 or 2. So Mai has a high chance to stun, which is great. Super Vegito AGL doesn't particularly like that because he loses his chance at basically countering. And Vegeta SS4 may not like that either because he may not get the chance to counter a super either. But it still helps because she has that issue where she's going to get hit really hard back because her defense is super low, 3,400. I'm not really going over the stats either because it doesn't really matter for this. So she's going to get hit really hard back, but she can go ahead and stun. And she also, the best thing about her, she gives 3 key, which isn't super necessary, but she gives the attack and defensive improvement to the allies. Now, if that was a flat 25%, even 15%, I believe that would be a lot more significant than the flat 2,000, but it's still along the right path of what we're going to be looking at in this game. So simply because of that passive and her being a support unit that good, basically that's what nets her here. There's no real negative to this unit at all, aside from the fact, like I said, she has low defense, but all these guys have low stats to start out with. So next is actually Vidal. It's funny that I have her daughter ranked higher than her, but I think Vidal is actually really good and underrated. The only real problem with this unit is she doesn't have a key link and she's not self-sufficient, because the cool thing about Mai is that she's like Bulma in that she gives herself extra key. She also gives herself extra defense, by the way. But she gives herself extra key to where she's able to get her supers more often. And even if she doesn't link well with her buddies, she gives them 3 key anyway, so it simulates having link. That's the beauty of those support units like that. Not just her, but those units that give key and then some sort of statistical improvement. That's why those 40% units are very good if you're familiar with the JP game. All right, so supreme damage and lowers attack and defense. Not greatly, but that's still really good. Also, an enemy that she attacks loses 20% of their attack. I don't particularly like the mechanic of having to hit them. It's so much better when it can be like Omega. It's just like, at the start of the turn, you just lose your attack. But it's fine, right? Because she's going to double up on that. They're going to lose probably upwards of 30% of their attack basically from her hitting them, which is great. They also lose defense, but that's not really... I burped a little bit, excuse me. That's not very viable, but... she still lowers her attack, which helps the duration of your turn and your team. And you can have a scenario with her, Intelligence Orale, you have Buhan, you have, I believe, Ice Shenron, who also, I think, lowers attack, but he has to hit them. You can build intelligence teams that basically nuke the opponent's attack down to 0, pretty close, to where all your units just become incredibly tanky, not because they have incredible defense or mitigation, but because you've lowered his attack so much. She also recovers some HP. She's going to recover a percentage of what she deals, which would be really good on some units, but just not her. I mean, she's not going to do very much damage, but it is something. It does help her avoid the same issue that Bulma has, in that Bulma gets hit hard, but, you know, she's going to heal you, but that healing is going to most likely be outpaced by the damage she's going to take back. This guy, or this girl, excuse me, does lower the enemy's attack, so she's going to take a little bit less damage on those hits. If you put orbs into her, which I wouldn't really recommend, but if you did, she could tank relatively well in that scenario, and then she'll be hitting a little harder, in which she will be able to recover some of the damage to make up some of that slack. Once again, only issue with her is lacking key link. She just needed shocking speed, Bandai. That's all she needed, but she doesn't have it. So that's the one problem with her. And everything that we've talked about negative, this pan epitomizes as a bonus, as a plus. Everything that the other ones had as an issue, she doesn't have as an issue, which is why she's number 1 on my list. I'm honestly grown very fond of this unit. I didn't notice she was so good. I've grown fond of her around the time that I saw that like 100% Raleigh STR video I put out like a few weeks ago, a month ago now at this point. She was using that video with STR Krillin and stuff from the Bob Shop, because I built a really tanky STR team. I didn't realize she was so good. Supreme damage to the enemy, and she gets 30% more defense for 3 turns. The only thing that would have made this card better is if that was for 6 turns, but I don't mind. 3 turns is fine, especially whenever the update rolls around, like I was talking about earlier, that allows that to maintain and not reset. But this is where it gets good. She gets 50% more attack, and she gets 100% more defense on top of her stats, which her defense isn't super bad, especially because she gets 100%. And then under Double Goku, she's getting the 120% twice from the Double Goku SS4 leads. The attack leaves to be desired. She's not meant to be a hard-hitting unit, but she does only get that for 7 turns. But I will say, in a lot of scenarios, that is going to last you the duration of the event. That's the one problem with her, is the 7-turn restriction. But hear me. I have been playing with this pan on my team, on every STR team I've been doing on Global. Not even all of my units are SA10 with orbs and everything crazy like that. And her passive lasts through the duration of the event, I want to say 90% of the time. 90% of the time. It doesn't matter what event it is at this point. So that's not a big deal. Okay, I want to make, and that goes for all the units with the 7 turns. 7 turns is literally long enough in majority of scenarios to beat the event. Okay, so that's not a problem. And she's benefited because she has 3 links that work solid on her team. Same lineage to a lesser degree, depends what you're running. Like if you're running, for example, double Broly's, that's still a 1 key link for her and Broly that they share. She has Kamehameha, which isn't super significant, but it is a bonus. And she has GT, which is the most prominent link on STR. So not only does she not take away key from her allies, she has the benefit of being able to super more often herself because she links well with them. She lacks prepare for battle, but GT is good enough for that team because you're running, 4, maybe 5 other GT units, depending on what you're running. So my mouth is getting dry, so I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up here, but there's no real reason as to why this pan isn't the best unit here. But that's just my opinion. Like I said in the beginning of the video, I gave you guys mine. I'm open to yours, so let me know in the comments down below. If you are new to the channel, please consider subscribing, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace out, guys.